We are 2 weeks through preseason games and certainly the majority of training camp to this point. Cleveland Browns shift to a game-like week of practice before the preseason finale Saturday against the Los Angeles Rams. Certainly a lot of evaluation and discussions to have about this roster at this point. John Kosko from PFF is going to join us to do that. Certainly going to talk about the quarterbacks, the offensive line depth. I think the excitement that most of us should have about the Cleveland Browns defensive line, and always works hand in hand with the Jim Schwartz defense, the defensive line and the secondary, and where the secondary is probably at as we get closer and closer to September 7th against the Cincinnati Bengals. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dogtown Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate everybody who comes out to the OBR.com every day for your favorite Cleveland Browns written content. While you are there, make sure you check into the VIP package. You will get the insider forums. You will get the access to Ask the Insiders, and your subscription to the OBR.com is bundled with Paramount Plus. You like watching dudes get beat up, you like UFC, for a small amount, you get Paramount Plus and you get the OBR.com. And again, thanks for the continued support here for the OBR streaming network. Browns 3D kicks off each night at 6 p.m. Mentioned yesterday, there are some changes coming. It happens with a lot of, content providers this time of year. So certainly some, chatter and announcements to come in the days and weeks to come. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on Twitch. PFF's John Kosko here is with us. John, before we get a little bit more in depth, we're about a month in now to camp, certainly 2 preseason games down. The thoughts maybe about where this team is at, maybe as opposed to where they were when basically, the kids were getting dropped off by mom and dad out of the minivans with their bags to go to camp.
I think all the reports and stuff like that this was a much more physical camp has kind of manifested itself in the first 2 preseason games. They are showing themselves well that they're like, for whatever reason, they're more disciplined this year. They look better coached this year. And I think that what the most exciting thing is that the offense looks competent and on schedule, which is what we're accustomed to seeing from a Kevin Stefanski offense. The 1-year Ken Dorsey experiment obviously was a failure. I'm not placing all the blame on Ken Dorsey. There's other aspects there that were the problem, but I think this year the team looks ready to go from a preseason standpoint. They're not making the mental mistakes that we saw a year ago, even in preseason. And I think while maybe the results won't be there for Browns fans, maybe in terms of the win-loss column, it won't be the worst offense in the NFL type of situation where it was you struggle to not have any preseason pre-snap penalties, and they look like they're going to be, from a defensive standpoint, they could win. They could legitimately win them games based on what they've shown so far. But all the reports out of like the training camp, the joint practices, and stuff like that, they've been phenomenal. So which is not something we saw a year ago for sure. So like take this type of stuff with a grain of salt, but like things look much more positive this year than it did last year.
No question about it. And I think even sometimes with the struggles the offense was having this year, I think it was kind of, once you got to see the Carolina game, once you got to see the Philadelphia game, I think it was more of a case of, oh, maybe the defense is just that good. And you kind of saw maybe a little bit of relief from the Browns offense, quarterback by Shedeur against Carolina, and certainly quarterback by Dillon against Philadelphia, which obviously makes for the transition here. And it's interesting and ironic, John, because we're talking about a quarterback battle between 2 rookies. And look, it's not the first time where an NFL team has essentially drafted 2 quarterbacks in the same draft year. But there's usually been times where it was, the first round quarterback, a day 3 quarterback. It's not really the case here. And the thing is neither one of these guys are battling for a starting job at this point. But let's go one at a time here. We'll go Shedeur, first week, Carolina, his play, and certainly we can get to Mr. Gabriel after that.
Yeah, Shedeur in his first game I thought was very good. There's obviously like a handful of plays where you would like him to have back and fix a couple of things. Like, I mean, his one thing that I think his biggest flaw in college was scrambling too much around and trying to make too many plays, thinking he's a better athlete than he is. Again, like he made a lot of big plays doing that type of thing, but you also take a lot of sacks, which is what he did. The first sack, there was nobody open on that. He could have checked it down, and you're hoping that your playmaker, makes a play if you check it down. But he scrambled around for 10 odd seconds and took a 1 yard sack, which is like largely inconsequential. There wasn't anybody open downfield to there's an easy first down or there was a window there to throw it. The second one was a bad one. It was on him. He felt the pressure, but then still hung on to the ball and with an open receiver. So there's obviously things to learn from there. There's some ball placement stuff that he had issues with on slants. But really, I'm not going to be too worried about his ball placement ever, I don't think, unless this becomes a problem for whatever reason. He's always been very accurate as a quarterback, so I don't find that to be a problem. So, he even when he was getting pressured and had a couple of plays where he had to sidestep the pressure, reset his feet in a pocket and delivered a strike, one for a touchdown, one out of the back of his own end zone. Those are 2 phenomenal plays by him. Obviously, the first touchdown was a great ball placement as well. So, there was a lot of really good plays out there. I think the routine stuff is just like the easy slant should be that'll come, I think, easily enough for him. So overall, I thought it was an excellent game. There was one ball that was, if you watch JT O'Sullivan's QB school, that he said that he had he put it as a turn. He classified it as turnover worthy. A thing he failed to see was that the ball was tipped at the line of scrimmage. It hit the thumb of the defensive tackle there on the line, and it like bananaed the ball back inside. So something to be aware of when watching tape or just anything. But it's easily missed. But we didn't classify that as a turnover worthy throw because the ball hits it's a defensive lineman at the line of scrimmage. Ball can go anywhere, and it's not really a fault of the quarterback in that type of situation. So a couple of big time throws and no turnover worthy throws from us. It was a really, I'd say a really solid performance. I think it was graded at 82 or something like that. So obviously scrambled for a couple of first downs. So it was really, really good overall first game with things that he needs to clean up and get better at.
Now, I know we talked, I don't know if it was text or it might even been on Twitter. Because the thing we wanted to see is, and it's such a weird conversation when you discuss it with Shedeur Sanders, because he was not a 5th round pick on paper. Yes, he was a 5th round pick. The Cleveland Browns are handling him like he was a 5th round pick, which, hey, with the results, you can't argue with the way the Cleveland Browns are handling Shedeur Sanders. He's playing well. Everything's been positive up until the, obviously whatever the tweak of the oblique. But what we were essentially discussing is he needs to start playing higher up the food chain talent-wise. Because the question is, and sometimes where it maybe looked a little sluggish, is that necessarily him? Or is that the quarterback having to get all 10 on the same page? One of the first snaps in that Carolina game, they break the huddle, and Caden Davis stays right next to him, kind of like the kid who's got to ask the teacher a question, and he leaned in, and Shedeur, bang, bang, Caden Davis went out, got himself aligned. There was no hitch. They got the playoff, no delay of game, any of that stuff. So, but now the talent he was playing with at Colorado, and we're talking about a guy that went number 2 overall, all of his weapons at Colorado right now are in training camps all over the NFL. Hunter and then other guys are in camps and performing well. So it kind of feels like Shedeur, and this was the hope for Philly. It didn't happen, but it's time to start putting more on his plate, because you want to see, is he playing to the level of the guys he's with, or is his play going to look like it should when he's playing with the guys who start regularly?
Yeah, I mean, you think about his time at Colorado. Obviously, Travis Hunter is a phenomenal player there. The other guys, the LeJohntay Wester, Will Shepherd, those guys, they have talent. Like, it's not like they were just garbage players or anything like that. Obviously, LeJohntay Wester, I think, returned a punt, for a touchdown in week 1. I really haven't kept up on Will Shepherd or the other guys that were on Colorado, but I just saw the highlight of that. And I mean, preseason, there's so many players that are being played. I'm not, it's so hard to keep up on literally everybody. Right. But the issue at Colorado was the offensive line and running game was like non-existent essentially. So I think there's habits that you create when a situation is so bad that, maybe if you're like a Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels type of athlete, like you can get away with that style of play at the NFL level because you're that good of an athlete. But when you're, Shedeur Sanders, and he's not like he's a bad athlete by any means. He's I think a perfectly average, above average athlete at the quarterback position, but like above average athletes at the quarterback position, 95% of the time you need to be there in the pocket and be able to throw strikes and not scramble around. That's the type of player you need to be. And he's got to break a lot of those bad habits that he did develop in college because of the bad offensive line around him. However the Browns, coaching staff wants to treat him, I do think he needs to see like the better, play with the better players and also have practice reps against the better players as well. I think, Carolina played their 1s and 2s, and he played well against the 1s and 2s for Carolina. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see what would have happened with Philly. So it's very possible he could have seen, the increased reps with the 1s and 2s against the 1s and 2s and stuff like that. It is unfortunate that, the oblique injury happened at the time that it did, right after this game where he was very good. But I think it would be obviously very beneficial for him to be able to start, pecking at the higher in the food chain of these in his practice reps. So hopefully he can be back to practice this week. We'll find out, obviously, and whether or not they are able to, he's able to play in the last preseason game.
Yeah, I mean, the irony that the 40-year-old quarterback in the room is the only one that's made it through camp without a ding. Injury-wise, hey, score one for the olds on that one.
Yes, us 40-year-olds, right?
Yes, I guess pickleball is indeed the key. So we get to, the second week, and, they get to Philadelphia, and now all eyes are on Shedeur, which they have been the entire time. And then all of a sudden, practice starts. There's no sign of Shedeur as far as taking any participation within the practice. We find out what the issue was, and it was a Joe Flacco, Dillon, Gabriel, a couple of joint practices. Gabriel still was working his way back from the hamstring. Whether it was a true game time decision, and this is the one thing with the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski is everybody rushes to get a quote from this guy, and you get the quote, but at the end of the day, it may not mean a hill of beans. Dillon Gabriel went out there, for all intents and purposes, looked healthy. Certainly some questions, and this is something for Sanders and for Gabriel. Years ago when spreads started to be coming into the game overall, these kids still at a young age, were playing under center. And, we're learning simple things like midline and the correct way to do handoffs. These kids now, 12 years old, the only time they might go under center is goal line or to take a knee to knock out a clock. So this is an issue for all of these guys kind of when they get to the league, and teams ask them to do some things under center, which is, it's weird because it's almost like asking you or I to use our opposite hand to brush our teeth. But, this is where we're at in the state of the game now. Gabriel gets in. I think what we hear, that the media leaks about what the Browns like about Dillon Gabriel, you see a quickness. You know what I'm saying? You see Obviously, he knows what's going on, and he processes quickly. He understands. With limitations, I probably have to play faster than the other quarterbacks in this room. But take us through Gabriel's Saturday in Philly.
Yeah. Other than basically 2 plays, it was really good. He got the ball up really quickly. He was, from a time to throw standpoint, basically 2.71 seconds. So he's getting it out in proper timing. Was only pressured 5 of his 22 dropbacks, which is basically a 23% drop pressure rate. It was sacked twice. So of the 5 pressures, he was sacked twice, which is like a pretty high pressure to sack rate, but obviously you're only getting pressured very few times in a small sample size. So if you're getting rid of the ball quickly, less likely for you to get pressured. So he was getting rid of it quickly, unlike, what we saw from Shedeur, buying more time, scrambling around back there and stuff. But timing wise, he'd hit that back foot most of the time, was delivering strikes, was very accurate with the football. You obviously you want to take back the fumble, which he had bad footwork on a basically a trap wham play. And the obviously the interception was really bad. Like tight end ran a bad route, but when you have such a muddy picture, you really probably shouldn't be throwing in that picture unless you're going to throw like a perfectly accurate football towards the sideline that only Deontay Johnson could catch it right there. He threw it, basically between the 2 guys, and the guy picked it off. So muddy picture, you really shouldn't just be throwing that ball. But other than that, he was really good. Basically, 15 of 20 on terms of the throwing. Didn't have any big time throws. Had a couple of nice wide open throws over to the middle of the field. Obviously converted on 3rd down, time and time again. And I think really you saw a guy that, hey, this guy can run an NFL offense. Maybe he doesn't have all the tools that you want from obviously a physical standpoint, but he gets rid of the ball quickly. And if things can be blocked up well around him, he can run an NFL offense. Is he ever going to be, I think, a top 2 type of guy? No, but that's kind of what the hope was, that you could get potentially a long-term backup type of a guy.
And I think, and Mike, the concern I had is because of the missed time, and then getting back into it, but I thought Gabriel handled himself well. The interception, there were 2 ways this could have gone. We could have thrown the ball to my mom in the 7th row, or if he had just thrown the ball to the sideline, the way Makumba was penetrating forward, if he had thrown it to the receiver to the sideline where either the receiver catches it, the ball goes out of bounds, whatever. And it certainly didn't help that the tight end kind of did the old little league, I got it, you get it at the last second. That probably could have prevented that as well. Dan Orlovsky did a great breakdown on the handoff, and there actually was a still shot with Pierre Strong looking at Dillon Gabriel. And sometimes a picture tells 1,000 words. And you could see that basically, Pierre Strong was looking right at Dillon Gabriel, and everybody, well, I don't know whose fault it was. You could just see the way Strong looked at Gabriel, and he kind of gave you a clue that it was probably Gabriel who was in the wrong in that instance. But again, these are things you want, I'm saying? Sometimes you have to take a hiccup in order to improve and understand. And, I don't want to say fail because it was a preseason game, but if we don't have a couple of failures, there does not become success and better work ethic. We have John Kosko here with us from PFF. Now, John, you spoke about it being blocked up. And to this point, we have not seen the majority of the starting offensive line, which I don't have a problem with when we're talking about a whole bunch of gentlemen over 30 and have dealt over the last couple of seasons with injury issues. We've got to see a good amount of the backups. We got to see DeJuan Jones, which I thought was the smart play when you're, supplanting somebody onto a different side of the offensive line, and you're hoping that he is going to take that and run with it. You got to give him some, basically some live reps, which they have. But the Tevin Jenkinses of the world, the Luke Whipplers of the world, the Zach Zinters of the world, where are the thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, so, well, I want to speak a little bit on DeJuan. So, DeJuan played 21 snaps. He didn't look good in those 21 snaps, though. 41.9 overall grade. So I have some concerns there. Obviously, when he was good on the right side in the first 2 years, but he you're adjusting to the left side. So I do have some concerns there. But Luke Whippler, I think has been the best offensive lineman for them this offseason or this preseason, and he's looked the part. Really been really solid in pass protection. Most of the offensive line this preseason has been really solid in pass protection. And he's been also really good in run blocking as well. Tevin Jenkins couldn't have had a worse first game and then turned it around and had as good of a game that he did in the second game. I'm not really sure what the issue was for him the first game. He was oversetting. His punches were just completely missing. And then you go up against the Eagles, who have a much better defensive front than the Panthers do, and he had a clean slate. He was phenomenal in that game. So it was an odd thing to see, especially I know that Tevin Jenkins has been really good as a starter, and he's a guy that can play a lot of reps for this team. So it was good to see that bounce back. Zinter didn't play in the first game, played in the second one. He was fine. They played 39 snaps. Had some good and bad in there. I want to see him start progressing and starting to get maybe dominant when you're talking about preseason games. Obviously, he was a third round pick last year, so I think you want to see that. Hey, this guy can. You've got two old guards that are. One likely going to be retiring, maybe not re-signing another. I want to be able to see, hey, yes, this guy can start games, moving forward. I think I haven't quite seen it yet from him, but, obviously there's lots more of improvement we can see from him. So, but overall, I think the offensive line from a pass protection standpoint, other than Tevin Jenkins and basically the first game and DeJuan Jones in the second game, I think has been really solid overall. And they just need to keep doing what they've been doing, and we'll see if we ever see any of the starters. Basically, probably not. But if this is what the offensive line is going to look like for the Browns this year, I think that's obviously really good for them moving forward this year.
Yeah, and the thing with Whippler, honestly, I think a lot of people kind of just forgot about Luke Whippler because first 2 years were essentially erased due to injury. People. From what we've seen of the run game, I think it's been positive, but how do you equate that when we're talking about you haven't had 4/5 of the offensive line play? Any of the three main ball carriers for this team, I think to this point, we've only had Sampson have 2 carries. So it's really hard to discuss the run game because we're going to discuss it about basically a whole bunch of guys that might even take a snap or necessarily be on this team week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals. I do want to flip it over. One of the huge parts of the success of 2023, without question, was the defense and certainly the defensive line, with Myles Garrett having a defensive player of the year season. Great work out of everybody else. But where this defensive line is at currently, we still don't have Mike Hall in the mix. They're running out there right now. I mean, I think they're running with edge 7, edge 8. There might have even been a 9th edge this week. The interior, Mason Graham, we got a little taste week 1. This group has the potential, and I don't want to go crazy with it, but it certainly has the potential to be the best defensive line in what is Jim Schwartz's 3rd season here now. And we know when this defensive line plays well for Jim Schwartz, it can cover up some warts in some other spots on this defense.
Yeah, it all starts with Myles Garrett, and we know what he can do. So, there's no question, what's going to be produced from that position. Shelby Harris obviously is really good, and then you've got some really good young guys. I think that they've brought in. I think Julian Okwara can be, good rotational piece there. Isaiah McGuire, I think we've seen him really develop, and as well as Alex Wright. And then they've also got Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. So they've got people at that edge position opposite Myles Garrett that will, really kind of help to have a good rotation there, put pressure on the quarterback, and maybe take a little bit off of Myles Garrett's plate in terms of getting quadruple teamed and stuff like that on certain plays. If they get, if Mason Graham can develop like we think he can, obviously that'd be a huge win for this defense as well, in terms of like, you got an extra first round pick, and you got arguably what was, many consider the best defensive tackle in this year's draft class. In that first game, he was double teamed, like I think eight plays of the 8 of his like 13 plays that he was on. It was kind of a crazy, you're going to get that at that position, but like, if you want to talk about why he didn't get any pressures in that game, I mean, 6 of his 8 pass rushes, he was double teamed in some form or fashion. So, he's only played 13 snaps this preseason. We didn't get to see any in this last game. But I think what we're seeing from, you see what they have at that defensive line. The sky's the limit for this unit. And obviously, if Myles Garrett, like, he was injured last year, something to also be aware of for people that always forget about this, is that he was injured and still was putting up phenomenal numbers. And if he is not injured, and I think he's like something, both legs were hurt or something like that. I mean, he's putting up, crazy pressure numbers, even though he was already doing that last year. But you just look back to the 2023 season from PFF standpoint, how we grade this, like he was a 92 something last year, obviously elite, best in the NFL, but like 90, he was a 90, almost a 95 in 2023, which is like to kind of explain in PFF terms, the difference between those two numbers is like, it gets really difficult to kind of actually go further up the chain. So like it gets exponentially harder to like get higher grades as you get into the 90s. So the fact that he's getting into that 95 level, over like a 92 level is there's a significant difference in there. I would say it makes it so much more difficult to get to that point. And it's, if we get that version of Myles Garrett, then, it's another Defensive Player of the Year award for him. And which he should have won last year, by the way. He was still the best defensive player in the NFL. But like, I guess, for whatever reason, the voters, have a bias against him for whatever reason.
Now, and the thing is, and from what the standpoint I like about the joint practices is, I kind of like looking at, what the other team's reporters say about your team. And the Eagles beat was just like glowing about the Browns defense, certainly about Myles Garrett. There was one out there, it was like he must have had 20 sacks. And we're talking about 2 joint practices. He must have had 20 sacks. And it was almost as comical that the Browns actually let him take that many reps, because at that point it's like, bro, we'll see you September 7th. I do want to get to the secondary, and we will in 1 second. This linebacker room, if you go back to basically a year from today, we're talking about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, we're talking about Jordan Hicks, and it seemed like it was going to be, something really, really special. Flash forward a year, Jordan Hicks, has retired after 10 years in the league. Unfortunately, the situation with JOK, we don't really have an outcome. All we know is he will not be able to take the field in 2025. But from what I've seen thus far of Carson Schlesinger, and basically just whatever you see that the offense is trying to do, if 49 is on the field on defense, 49 is on the ball. And he's really kind of, grown, in my opinion, quickly. And the thing that I keep coming back to with Carson Schlesinger is 1 year of essentially playing at UCLA. So I think what we see of Carson Schlesinger, there is still a great probability there's going to be another level of Carson Schlesinger probably coming pretty soon.
Yeah, the dude is a dog, man. Like, he absolutely gets after it. And I loved watching him play in that first preseason game, because he came downhill hard and was banging heads and then shedding the blocks and making tackles. And obviously he finished with like a 91 grade or something, 91.4 grade. And he was phenomenal. So I want to see more of him. Obviously, when you get to, he only played 13 snaps in in this preseason game, first preseason game, didn't play in the second one. So like if he's a rookie, so there's going to be warts that happen, when live bullets are flying and you're going against, first team offenses all game long. But I mean, early signs that this guy absolutely belongs. And I think there was definitely like eyebrows raised when he was drafted at the 33, right? So at 33. So I think first game kind of squashed those any of those worries, but we'll see what happens when the season comes along. And I think what we've seen so far though is that he's instinctual. Obviously, like I said, he's an absolute dog in the run game. So we'll see. But I love what I've seen so far to start off with in preseason. And like he was a guy that flew around at UCLA, and you saw all the things the reason why the Browns took him there. And I think it, when JOK comes back and you put those two guys on the field at the same time, obviously it would be next year. I mean, you could see some fireworks with those guys and have like a tandem of like, potentially down the line, the best linebacker room in the NFL.
And I think the reason the Browns maybe decided to go with a little more physicality this year in camp is because I think there wasn't going to be a way to tell Carson Schlesinger to turn it off. And I think it was kind of like, well, if this is what's going to happen, we got to let everybody know we're going about as close to live as we can, because I can't find the off switch on this kid. And it's just the way he goes. And certainly for a team that probably missed a ton of tackles in 2024 and, whether it was right or it was wrong, got a soft reputation. I think a lot of it is the writing was on the wall that the season was over. And a lot of guys just, that's the way it kind of goes sometimes. The secondary. Now, I know Martin Emerson has never truly been a PFF darling. But with him going down, Greg Newsome, how this is going to work once we get to the regular season, I don't know. There could be the potential that Greg Newsome just goes outside and stays outside. There could be the potential that Greg Newsome goes outside in early downs if he's the best guy for the slot and they think they at least got somebody can handle some outside reps. Unfortunately for Greg Newsome, that might mean it's a double duty of playing outside, playing inside. It could go anyway, of course. But John, that cornerback room and what we've seen of it hasn't been that great to this point, but there's just not a lot of playing time in that cornerback room after Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. And I kind of think that, maybe some of the guys that are going to be in that secondary, certainly in that cornerback room for week one against the Bengals, might not even be in Berea yet.
Yeah. So I would assume they're going to make some trades in their secondary because after Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome, Cameron Mitchell had 371 snaps last year. The rest of the room combined had 10 in the NFL. So you definitely need some depth there. And you need to probably make some moves, because even if you like, Nick Needham, right? Like guy has been in the NFL for, since 2019, has played good snaps and stuff like that. But again, he played one snap last year. Right. And I think, whatever you think of the guys that you brought in, like, I think you need like the most important room, in my opinion, like in terms of outside of obviously having a good quarterback or whatever, but in terms of like a room that needs depth, the secondary needs the depth the most, because one injury can derail an entire season, because defensive football is a weak link, like breaking point. Like if you have a weak chain in your link in your chain or whatever, everything crumbles based off that. And if you have that in your secondary, it is over, because NFL teams will find that weak link and they will pick it apart over and over and over again. Now, however they're going to deploy Greg Newsome, he can play inside and outside. And I'm perfectly happy with him being able to play either side, either part. It just depends on who they're going to bring in. I have to assume they're bringing somebody in, though. I can't imagine them not going with what the room they have is now. And because, like I said, it's just been 10 snaps outside of Cameron Mitchell from the rest of the group. And Cameron Mitchell doesn't look good in preseason. So, again, I think that we will see. I think we'll see some trades coming into, maybe some cut downs that happen at roster cut down time, that they'll make waivers for, some cornerbacks that you are on a stacked defense or something like that. But again, it doesn't look great right now. And it would, as much as obviously PFF hasn't liked Martin Emerson over, especially last year, he was bad last year. I don't think anybody can argue that. He was much better in 2023. I ragged on him a bit because I think everybody was thinking he was like a top 5 cornerback in the NFL, and it's just like he was not even close to that. He was still an average cornerback in 2023. So losing him, it does hurt a lot because he had experience, and he is capable of really good play. I just think he was overrated by Browns fans from that 2023 season just because of stats alone. So it hurts. That injury hurts a lot, and they definitely need to make a move.
Well, we can't have the former Kansas Jayhawks safety here and not at least talk about the safety room. Grant Delpit's kind of pretty much been on ice. There's no reason not to be. It's one constant in that room to this point. After that, it's Hickman, it's Jenkins, it's Casey. I think with Casey, and I actually talked about it yesterday, I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe tried to throw him in with some nickel slot reps this week, just because he came into the league as a corner and he certainly has some experience, playing anywhere within the secondary. And then, of course, the undrafted free agent McMillan, who you just look at him, looks the darn part, long, kind of put together, can play some specials. John, we have this conversation almost every year in regards to the Cleveland Browns, and there's years where they spent money on it and they thought they had the answer. Free safety. Again, here we are. And it used to be defensive tackle we had these conversations about with the Cleveland Browns, but here we are yet again in free safety in the Cleveland Browns, and it's just kind of like
I'm not really sure understanding kind of like what their approach at the safety position was this year, because Delpit is good. But like, I think Ronnie Hickman is fine. I think there's limitations to his game. I don't, he's not a free safety type of guy anyways, for sure. But, Rayshon Jenkins has been in the league for, several years now. He can play all the positions there. But like KZ, I agree. He's going to be probably going to be, maybe if they're not going to make any moves, like he would be slotted in as that nickel player, because he's been in the NFL since 2017. This is his 5th team, 4th team or whatever. So he's a guy that can play, pretty much every position in the secondary. And I think you like that versatility, but again, he is 32 years old. Rayshon Jenkins is 31 years old. So you got old guys there, and you want some vets in the secondary, but I think you want some youth and and whatnot, but they need to find a free safety. Really that's knows what he's doing out there and maybe has experience playing free safety. KZ has played it some, but it's like, he's not a true free safety type of guy. And, with knowing how the Browns run their defenses and stuff, they need a true free safety out there. It's not like they're never running single high type of coverage looks and stuff like that. So they definitely need to find somebody. And whether that's a trade or they're making moves at the cut down time or whatever, I think there's, I have questions about the secondary this year. Despite obviously Delpit's really good. Obviously Ward is very good. Again, you want to make sure that you are protected from injury if something like that happens, which already has happened, and to just keep building that depth, because I don't think there's anything more important really in any room in the NFL, but secondary depth really can derail a season, or it can hold up a season.
Yeah, because it's rare when you talk about a positional group that carries probably 6 guys, and pretty much 6 guys are going to play. It doesn't happen very often with other positional groups. Real quick, just quick guys from Mary Kay Cabot. The Isaiah Bond deal is fully guaranteed. So, whenever you're doing those 53-man rosters, Bond's on it. Just understand that. Yes.
How much of it is did they say what the amount was?
Let's go real quick here,
because that's interesting. I mean, if it's like a,
Is a fully guaranteed 3-year deal worth $3.018 million, more consistent with the third round pick he was projected to be.
okay.
So just so you understand that Isaiah Bond is on your 53-man roster. May not be active week one. It's certainly going to be a stretch for Isaiah Bond to get, because as I was telling you guys yesterday, Quinshon Judkins has already kind of had a foot in the door. He's been in the playbook. Isaiah Bond is coming in this late in the summer, completely blind. So to think that, he could be, a contributor early, I mean, could be possible. But, and as we are shifting now to more of game week type practices, this is all going to be on Isaiah Bond and how much time he wants to commit from himself to get caught up as fast as he possibly can. Now, before we let you go, I mean, look, this is kind of the part where, again, we tell you to throw the PFF to the side and, talk a little Cleveland Browns fan that you are about this team and where you think we are.
Yeah, I would expect. I'm not expecting much. I'm not expecting much from the season. But
to this point, are you a little more positive than maybe you were a month ago?
Yeah, sure. I'm definitely more positive about the season than I was a month ago. I think it's still. You talk about their first 6-game stretch, absolutely brutal, right? Like you talk about a team that was picking number 2 overall and was 4th in the division, and how did the schedule become so hard? Obviously, when you're in a division say what you will, but the Steelers, the team wins games and gets to the playoffs. Like they're not a Super Bowl contending type of team, in the past decade or whatever. But like they win games and they get into the playoffs. Bengals, what that offense is. That offense can shred you for 30 plus points in a game in a blink of an eye. And then obviously what the Baltimore Ravens are. So you're always punching up in this division because it's always so brutal. But how the rest of the schedule became so difficult as well is kind of like mind blowing. Obviously you're going against the NFC North, which the NFC North is a dogfight, right? So you got the Vikings, you got the Packers, you got the Lions. So it's going to be brutal, and I think what I want to see from the season is like, can Shedeur Sanders be an NFL quarterback, a franchise NFL quarterback for you? Because I think you need to find that out this year. I've already have my opinion on Dillon Gabriel. He's a backup, and I said that from day one when they drafted him, and I was not happy about the draft pick, regardless if the guy is a long-term backup. I just don't think he can do enough to be like I think that the ceiling you'd want from him is like Brock Purdy basically, and I don't know if he can get there,
if he can even reach that,
right? And Brock Purdy is I think he's a good NFL quarterback. He's a good NFL obviously he is, because he's 3 years in the league and he's done what he's done with his numbers and stuff like that. But like that's what you want. That's what your hope is from Dillon Gabriel, and that's not the hope that I would want from a quarterback. But Shedeur Sanders, I thought, was a first round talent on film, and and I think he has that in him. And it's like, can we see that this year? If not, then you have 2 high draft picks next year, and you're probably going to go with the quarterback next year. But that's kind of what I want to see out of this season, because I really think we're probably going 1-5, 0-6 type to start the season. Like you may be able to, if the defense plays to the 2023 level, you're gonna be competitive and maybe win some games. But you cannot rest your laurels on a defense winning you games week in, week out. And but I am much more hopeful in terms of like, hey, they look much more competent this year compared to last year at this stage. We'll just have to see if that translates to the regular season, because one of the biggest gripes I have with the Kevin Stefanski offense, or the team so far, in his entire tenure, there's a ton of pre-snap penalties, and that type of stuff like really makes me mad as a fan, because like me as a player, and you as a player know as well, like the snap count, the play when you get out there. There should be no excuse of like jumping early and stuff like that type of stuff. Literally never happened to me in my entire career of busting a play, because I knew exactly what I was doing every single play. And so like that type of stuff just irritates the heck out of me. And I think if we can get those things squashed, I think you can see a competent offense, and I think you'll see like the signs of like, okay, we can see, the rebuild that happened in 2025, and maybe, shooting for, playoffs and beyond in 2026. I just don't see it in 2025 though.
How about the pre-snap penalties? And, and I think it was probably my first collegiate practice. And basically what it was is, as you're a receiver and you break the huddle, what is your thought process? And I think we all kind of looked at him like, well, we're just going to look at the defense. No. What route am I running? And when is the ball being snapped? On 1, on 2, on 0. So literally that was and then because it was, I don't know how you can forget something in 4 seconds. And like, that was literally, I don't know how you can forget something in 4 seconds. So while you were getting to your spot, my assignment is this, and the ball is being snapped on that. Do not worry about anything else.
I have a quick story for you here. So my dad was a center in high school and in college. He played at D3 college or whatever, and he said that he had one pre-snap penalty in his entire career, and it was like his senior year, last game of his senior year or something like that. Like he still to this day doesn't know, like it irritates him that he had a pre-snap penalty and he's 70 years old. But like I coach high school football here in East Tennessee, and also coach youth football or whatever. And it blows my mind that we can practice, snapping literally every single day, 50 snaps plus like pre-practice or whatever. And then our center like forgets the snap count. Like I don't understand. I don't understand it. Obviously the Browns aren't that bad, but it's like, what is going through kids' minds and like players' minds when they go from the huddle to the line of scrimmage and then forget what they're doing. I get NFL play calls are much more complicated. You have a kill, you have 2 plays that you're called in the huddle, and you have a kill, and there's all sorts of stuff. But man, like you rep that stuff every single day, multiple times a day. You're digging into the playbook. I just don't understand how you can be that way. And I feel like it has to come down to coaching in terms of like it's got to be disciplined and drilled into you. At the NFL level, that is. At the high school level, like I have no idea how a kid they just dribbled the snap on the ground this time. Like, 8 times in a row? Okay.
Well, the thing also, though, John, is now with so much shotgun, you can't do the old, knuckle to the butt once, twice to remind him, just in case he forgot what exactly the snap count is. Can't really do that when you're in the shotgun so much. We had a blast here, obviously, talking with John Kosko. It's been years now that these conversations have been going on, and John certainly can bring the PFF perspective, and certainly brings his Cleveland Browns fandom perspective, and so obviously brings a former player perspective of the game as well. So we appreciate John for his time. Everybody head on over to obr.com. Of course, great written content from our team of writers. I am not even joking. Look into the VIP, of course, package. For those of you who have it, there's information that you guys have had, and now you see it come to fruition. So I highly suggest, you tell your friends, help us out here with that. You have the insider forums. You have the Ask the Insiders forums as well. You also will get bundled with Paramount Plus. So, UFC, and it seems like there's a UFC event almost every 2 weeks as they transition away from pay-per-view to subscription. You get that here. So 2 great things for the price of 1. The OBR streaming network every night beginning at 6 p.m. with Browns 3D, hosted by this ugly mug. Plenty of shows throughout the week. As I told you, certainly some, changes coming that you guys are probably starting to see now trickle out through social media. It's just the way it goes this time of year. We appreciate those that have been with us. We will appreciate those that come along with us as well. All that being said, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network, and we will talk to y'all tomorrow.